success to prove that any idiot could learn quantum mechanics or energetic geometry, or to try to make the whole world work for all humanity, and that any idiot can do it. I was kind of the little idiot guinea pig B, he called me, which he was considered guinea pig A, and sometimes he would talk to me on the front row, because I always sat on the front row. When Ann Fuller, she traveled with him a lot. I became really part of the kind of casual interaction. I never tried to get too personal, but he let me into his life, and I traded the audio tapes for him. We had a deal, and it was really quite fun, and I'm amazed that I got away with doing it. My copy of the tapes burnt to the ground. I had a studio which I attempted to make a band called the World Man Band, because at that time the best way to communicate with the most people was music, you know, with Jimi Hendrix time and that kind of stuff. And so I tried to make a band, but it didn't work. But the studio burnt to the ground, and all my tapes that I had, I actually burnt most of them. But I always gave a copy to the office, and Bucky used to say I had 500 hours of investment there. So, and I did a lot of work in the original World game in the basement to help draw the electric system for the World Electric System that he invented. I was really quite close when he was just finishing the 67 Expo Dome for the World's Fair, and I got to witness all that. It was quite amazing. That was before some of the books actually were taken from my audio tapes. Naomi Smith that transcribed them in his office. She was his original secretary, and it was just amazing. I got to be extremely personal with him, and go to his house sometimes, and traveled from Maine to San Francisco to New Orleans to Texas, and up to Michigan, and all the universities he talked to. I went to a great deal. Then when Jamie, his grandson, got big enough to travel with him, I got out of the way because I thought I was getting in the way of the family. But prior to that, I actually traveled a great deal with him, and learned a lot. You know, I figured he was the greatest educational system in the world, and to travel around with him was unbelievable. From that point of view, I got the dome from him, and it's a miracle to be living in his dome. But I ended up giving it to Bill Burke so that he would take care of it. I always wanted him to get it, so they're taking care of it now.
I'd like to ask you, Michael, how old were you when you first heard of Buckminster Fuller, and then how old were you when you first met him?
Well, I met him at a poetry reading he just got back from Russia. It was about 1965, 66. And there was this hippie poet that was a friend of his from San Francisco, and I met him at that poetry reading. And him and Ann both. He introduced me to Ann. And let's see, I was about 22 or something like that, involved with the educational system itself. Kind of regurgitates on itself and doesn't let other people in, and I've always been pushed out of it because I don't have a degree. But Bucky never felt that way. He felt like anyone was as important as anybody else. It's really wonderful to actually start thinking about Bucky again, because it's just astounding when you really go deeply involved with energetic geometry. Everything goes the speed of light, no matter what it is. And people don't really think about that much, but the table, the chair, everything that goes around you is going the speed of light. And then you can imagine an electron going 186,000 miles a second can go through the Earth and back about 10 times in a second. That what happens around you when you're with Bucky and he thinks that way, and when you're with people that think that way, then you realize that anything can happen, because everything is so mysteriously out of your consciousness because everything's going the speed of light. It's just you learn that that's normal when you're around Buckminster Fuller. And becoming a scientist is so important, and people just don't realize that what science really is. It's an extremely exciting attitude about life, learning by experience. It's unbelievably more religious, actually, and it makes progress for humanity to change the environment to make it propitious for all humanity to be a success on Earth, which is really the main reason to be alive. And I've had friends die because they don't have very big dreams. You'll stay alive if you have a bigger dream, and really everyone should obtain the dream to try to help humanity become a success on Earth, because it makes you stay alive. You know, a lot of people just give up, but there's times I could have given up, but I'd say, well, I owe Bucky a little bit there, so it's really important to try to stay alive for everybody in the world to be a success. This house, but I spent over $100 grand on that house, keeping that up for 27 years. And the house was a plywood dome. I think it was a 39-foot diameter. Had heating in the floor, radiant heat in the floor. But it was really exciting to live in. Had a great garden with a fountain. He used to sit out by the fountain. When he lived there, I actually went and sat in the back with him once. It was a beautiful place. Had a redwood fence, so it rotted. It was. It's always good to make a cement fences, and I've learned, but it was really hard to keep up the fence. But the dome itself was really a wonderful design, and if you kept it, I took the skylights out because it tend to leak, so that would preserve it. I kept it up, but I'd rent it to people, and then students, and keep it up that way.
Did you ever travel overseas with Buckminster Fuller?
Well, I went around the world, and I went going west. It's best to go around the world west. Most people go east, but if you study the northwest spiral of what Bucky considers the history of the world, it's good when you go straight over to Tokyo and into India. You're starting at the oldest part of the world. Of course, Africa is when it really started, and it came across the mountains split. Some people went on one side of the mountain, one on the beach, but you get the history of the world unfolds in front of you from the largest past to the most prominent, where you finally get to California. But I went around the world that way, and I was going to meet him in London, in New Delhi, India. He was going to do the Nehru lecture, or he did the Nehru lecture, but I was going to meet him there, and then a war broke out, so I was stuck in a war. And he got out because he talked with Mrs. Gandhi, actually on the radio to the whole country. She asked him, he told me in England just a week later after that, Mrs. Gandhi asked him to come and sit with him and talk to her to keep Mrs. Gandhi's mind off the war before she went on the radio. And Bucky was going to build 3 airports for her in Madras and New Delhi and Bombay. And then she was assassinated, so he never did it. You know, it's amazing to be sitting in England talking to someone who had been sitting with the President of India.
It changed your life. It changed my life. It changed the lives of literally thousands of people personally, and all of those people changed the lives of thousands of other people.
That's a good subject, because it's amazing how many people he did talk to personally, you know, in his life. It was like 2,000 or 3,000 people a week, you know, consistently.